why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and me? Why?
Okay, that can be an entire stream in itself. So that is not a very simple question, to be very honest.
Because brother Khalid, many believers and non-believers alike struggle with, according to the Quran. The Quran says, there is a verse in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create a jinn and mankind except to worship me. So the question is, if God is absolutely self-sufficient, al-Ghani, as Quran
Hmm.
categorically says, Wallahu al-Ghaniyyu wa antum al-fuqara. You are fuqara and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghani. He is free from all things, free from all needs and dependencies. So why
Hmm.
did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create human beings for worship in the first place? So if worship does not benefit God in any way, then what is the philosophical purpose behind the creation? Is worship meant to fulfill a need in God, or is it entirely for the benefit and the perfection of the human being? How should we understand this verse in the light of God's absolute independence and the self-sufficiency, brother Khalid?
Right. Okay. So yeah,
Simply
that's a
why
very
God created you and me.
right. Right. So as I'm saying, there's a lot that can be said about this. Might
Yeah.
require more than one stream to address everything in detail. So there's a lot that I can say. I'll try to be very brief, inshallah. And being very brief, might involve not giving a full explanation of everything, because there are some questions that no one has an answer to. Okay, and not just Muslims, but from all particular worldviews. This is where again I would start with doing a comparison. Okay, there are these big questions of life, and inshallah, one video of mine with Dr. Nasir Khan is going to come and he's going to touch on this issue in more depth. So people can enjoy that. I can just plug that in. My part two discussion with Dr. Nasir Khan would cover this more in depth. But there's something very interesting that I want to address, because this generally could be people going through doubts. You might have such questions. So within our life, trying to understand our meaning in life, there are some big questions in life. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Where did I come from, and where am I going? We can say that these are the main important questions in life. Now Dr. Nasir Khan says that looking at our life just from our perspective, life, human beings have three main domains where we have questions. We have the moral domain, like what is good in that sense, why should I be good, or what is good in that sense. And there's the intellectual domain, why human beings are here, like why do I have reasoning, what is the purpose, like all three. I'm trying to combine all three. And the spiritual domain, we have this need to connect to a transcendent entity, and we have to understand what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of life, what is the purpose of the intellect. Now all of these three questions, and the three important questions that I told, three domains and the three important questions, which is why am I here, where did I come from, why am I here, and where am I going. This is the main crux of why are we here, what the meaning of life in that sense, these questions. Now Dr. Nasir Khan actually explains, if you take any other worldview, so before even answering your question, I'm just trying to make something very clear. You take any other worldview, you won't find as meaningful as what Islam has to offer as an answer to these questions. You take any other philosophy, you take any other religion, you would see that, okay, this is not directly fully addressing that question. They might touch on this question, but that would be a side point, and the primary focus would not be that. Whereas what Dr. Nasir Khan said, that he was explaining how scholars explain that, just by reading the Quran, you find clear answers to all of these questions directly within the Quran. So that makes the Quranic perspective the most meaningful. In fact, there's a verse in the Quran that actually challenges mankind. Actually, there are more than one verses that challenges mankind to bring a more meaningful system of guidance than this. And you would find that you will always fail, because just like the Quran has an inimitability challenge, this is another challenge, the most meaningful challenge. I call it the most meaningful challenge, that you would find this is the most meaningful explanation of reality. Okay, so when we've set the pace that, okay, no other explanation of reality is as meaningful as this one, now let's come to your particular question. Why did Allah create all of mankind? Now, when we link this to worship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship Him in that sense. that suffices from our end, that okay, yes, we have been created for worship. But then you can go on further and ask, okay, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have the need to create in the first place? We are not saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has any need, because he is need free. Allah does not have any need. But yet when we ponder on the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of creators, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of all goodness. Giving life is a form of goodness, like, and creation in that sense. If you have, like, I just use one example to make sense, okay, I'm not trying to equate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to some creation. That if you have a very good, like, you have the best artist, by default you would see that okay, there has to be some art, like, there has to be, if you have the best artist, at least at one point of time you would see the artist doing his artwork in that sense. The same way, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of creators, then at one point you can expect that there would be creation and the best of creations in that sense. Now when we talk about the best of creations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already created different kinds of creations. One, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the angels, which by their will they cannot reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commandment, and they abide by whatever Allah has to say, they follow. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created animals. You have animals as such who just go by the instinct that Allah gives them, and they also worship Allah. Angels worship Allah and animals also worship Allah. Why do they worship Allah? Because Allah has created them with that disposition. These are also creation, but there's one more creation that is even better than both of these, which is humankind, which first of all has the ability to reject, like to disobey Allah, but at the same time on its own free will can accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and still obey him despite having desires that go against that will. Now there is beauty in this creation, there is wisdom in this creation. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of creators, he creates the best of creation. We are one of the best of creations because we exhibit this ability to be either better than the angels or worse than the animals. How? Like if humanity has, we human beings have, our makeup is made up of rationality and desires, and they both go sometimes conflict with each other. So you can say rationality or like our will, etc. It no other animal has this special ability that we have in this sense. No, nor do the angels. Now having this kind of rationality, which is unlike the angels, because angels just have that, they don't have desires.
Quran also says they are already free from all kind of sins. La ya'sun Allah ma amrahum wa yaf'aluna ma yu'marun. There is a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the angels, they are free from the sins.
Right.
That's why they are not ashraful makhlukat. Am I right, brother?
Right. You can say that. So we have that rationality, even angels have that rationality, but at the same time we have desires. So desires conflict with our rationality. So having desires, yet if you follow what you ought to do, then you are raised above the ranks of angels. Whereas let's say if you have rationality, you have desires, and your rationality tells you not to do something, you realize it, yet you follow your desires, then you go even below than the animals, because animals just have desire, they don't have this rationality. So we have this ability to either be better than the angels or worse than the animals. You can see this from the Quran itself. The Quran itself accuses those, or tells those who are like, who are not using their rationality, to be worse than cattle in that sense. So we have this ability. So there is beauty in our creation. In fact, things like sabr is only relevant to us, not to angels, because having this kind of there's a beauty in sabr as well, where you ought to do something, but your desires is conflicting with that, and you're stuck in this state. That there is beauty in this. So there's a lot of beauty in this. At the same time, us living in this particular life is a means for us to emulate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes. Because we have injustice in the world, there is possibility of amending that, and us having that within our fitrah to be just and to actually emulate justice in that sense. We have the opportunity to, in some sense, emulate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attribute. That is something unique we have. Again, then what unique we have, as I was talking about free will, there's something which this physicist, astrophysicist, his name is Avi Loeb, he says, and I find this quote really amazing. He got shocked at one point of time when he was just pondering on the universe, and he was saying that, there's something strange, like, I'm paraphrasing what he said, that, at the farthest corners of that universe, they just follow laws properly. Like, the atoms, electrons, everything, they just follow laws. This corner of the universe, they're just following laws of nature properly. There's no disobedience as such. Like, there's just everything in nature properly abides by some kind of law that is ordained upon it. Despite human beings, like, but human beings is an exception. Like, we don't properly follow laws. So it's like, how is that the case? Like, if, like, I was secular to begin with, but it just tells us that we have something extraordinary there. So the extraordinary part is that we have the ability of free will, and which does not exist in any corner of the universe. Even angels don't have that. Imagine. Yeah, jinns have it. We and jinns, we both have this ability of free will. So if this is something extraordinary, then I would say it's not implausible to expect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us an extraordinary ability of free will, then something extraordinary would be expected from us in that sense. At the same time, we have an extraordinary ability of connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, I can just pray right now and connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then if that is expected, then something extraordinary would be expected of me. Is not implausible to say that. So from that perspective, our life story is somewhat clear in that sense, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this ability of free will, and He created us because we are the best of creation, and we have the ability to rise above the angels in that sense. And that is one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, because we are the best of creations in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's
not, and creation itself, like creating life, is a good thing. Like, generally in philosophy we understand, like, the act of creation itself, like, is net, like, in net perspective, it's a good in that sense. Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating all types of different life forms, we are one of the best life forms. So why would Allah not create this particular life form? Now, your question was particularly related to worship, if I'm not mistaken. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship Him? Because this is again, a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you one example. Okay, there's much more to it, and as I told you, like, it would not be a simple answer. I told you, and I'm just scratching the small surface of it. The answer has to be very deep. But I just want to ponder on one fact. There are some narrations that talk about in the afterlife, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reveal Himself to everyone, or like, reveal even partially. If you were able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everyone would want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would go and try to go in sujood. But what would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Those who did not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, He would straighten their backs. So they would not be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they would just be straight in that sense. Their backs would get straight. So it is by default that any creation of Allah, if he sees Allah, he would by default worship Allah in that sense. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the ability even without seeing Him, worshipping Him, and that is again the blessing that Allah has given us. And of course, that is truth, because Allah is the only being worthy of worship. We are in this state where whatever we do, like whatever our ultimate obedience and our ultimate guidance move towards, is our object of worship. Okay, so worship is not very restricted in that sense that it's restricted to sujood. It's more than that. Human beings have this disposition that whatever we strive for, whatever we love the most, and whatever we obey the most is our object of worship. And for any human being, he cannot say that, okay, I don't worship anything, because he would always have something or the other that he loves the most and he obeys the most. So he would have something that he will always worship. But whereas for us, when we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are in line with reality, because He's the only being worthy of worship. Anything other than that is falsehood. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want human beings to be on falsehood in that sense? So that is...
Brother Khalid. Yeah. Brother Khalid, let me ask you, perhaps it would be a most difficult question, for the theism, the problem of evil. We live in a gatho-cosmological world, where both good and evil coexist, where nothing deserves flux and nothing nihil purification. Every event raises profound philosophical questions. As Muslims, we believe that وَلِقَدْرِ خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ مِنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَالْبَعْثِ بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. So now the atheists often argue that if God is all powerful, all knowing, and perfectly good, then the existence of evil should be impossible. They ask why are there wars, disease, earthquakes,
Right.
injustice, and the suffering of the innocent people? If God has the both knowledge and the power of the prevent evil, why does He permit it? So, brother Khalid, does the
Hmm.
existence of evil logically undermine the existence of God? Or does the problem of evil arises from our limited understanding of the divine wisdom, purpose, and the nature of good and evil, brother?
Okay. Jazakallah khair for the question. I just finish on what I was saying in
Yeah.
just two sentences. So the answer is equates a lot many things. But just one thing to ponder on regarding worship itself is that uh, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needed our worship in that sense, like the bodily worship in that sense, why is there no worship in Jannah? Is Allah
Yeah.
frees us from particularly that kind of worship is because in the limited time Allah is testing us to see if we are the best within the being the best of creations, if we actually rise above ourselves, our angels, or we go even below animals. This is what we have in our hand from that perspective. So just keep in mind that Allah does not need our worship in that sense, uh, because in Jannah that particular type of worship is not going to be there, or the bodily worship. It's all in this life. So do worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can, because there would be no worship in the afterlife in that sense. So that's our opportunity to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as possible. Regardless, that's one point. Our second point regarding to that question itself is that also scholars explain that regarding our salvation, everything Allah has told us. Now you can speculate about deeper realities related to the particular question. Why did Allah do this? Why did Allah do that? But that still, even if you don't have a full answer, that does not affect the fact that you have to pray 5 times a day, does not affect the fact that you have to fast and you have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and continue all of your obligatory and supplementary prayers. So they give an example, scholars give these examples. I just wanted to summarize the answer, because I there's much more to be said, but is that if your friend, like let's say you and me, let's say okay, you and me are going on a boat, okay,
Yeah.
and I know that you care for me, okay, and I know that, okay, you want goodness for me, you
Brother,
want
let
guidance
me
for me.
brother Khalid, let me remind you, we are already in a same boat.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So let's say that you push me in the water, you give me a lifeguard, let's say, and you just reach the island and meet you then and explain everything. What would be the most rational thing for me to do? Like, why did you push me? I'm just standing there. You pushed me out of the boat. You said meet me on the island. The island is just right there, not very close. I should just swim, take the life, take the whatever life equipment, and just swim to the island and then meet you there. But let's say I stand and speculate.